Recently, I had the pleasure of meeting Glenn Vilppu, a legendary instructor and artist. His teaching had a significant impact on my life and career. Mr. Vilppu and I had a conversation, and I got to ask him some of the questions you guys submitted. Here it is. Welcome to Proko. My name is Stan, and we have a very, very special guest, one of my heroes, one of the people that I really look up to, Mr. Glenn Vilppu. So, thank you so much for letting me come to your studio.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
First of all, before we start into some of the questions that people submitted, I want to tell you how much of an honor it is to be here, because you were one of the first instructors that I was exposed to as a kid.
Oh.
Yeah, in my animation class in high school as a freshman, one of the first videos that my animation teacher played was one of your VHS tapes back in 13 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons I really started to like animation, and then eventually got into fine art. So I have you to thank for
thank you.
a lot of that.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, thank
Actually,
you.
that's something I hear a lot of people.
I'm sure you do.
I get a lot of people in the industry. I was their first instructor.
Yeah. You probably were one of the only ones making videos at the time, right?
Yeah.
That were filming that. Yeah, so it was...
Long time ago.
Yeah.
And most people know me, like, for instance, like yourself, through the animation.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't start in animation until I was 40. I'm a painter. You look at the stuff that I do, I'm a painter first.
Mm-hmm.
It all begins with basic fundamentals, whether it's animation or painting, sculpture, it's all the basics.
So, but when did you start drawing, or when did you just get into art?
Well, first of all, my father is a Sunday painter.
Sunday painter?
No, he painted. He was an engineer professionally.
Oh, okay. Painted on the weekends.
Yeah, and he would paint on weekends and take classes. And so I specifically remember, and I must have been literally 5 years old. He was at an easel working on a painting, and I was on the floor tracing stuff out of his books. In doing that, I started doing that, and I remember something, I think it was around Christmas time. And so well, my background is Finnish. I'm a Finn, from Finland.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And we lived in Finland. I didn't learn English until I started school.
Oh.
So, but we had reindeer. At Christmas time, though, what I'm talking about, I think it was upstate New York somewhere. And what I did is I did a tracing of a sort of a horse using simple spherical forms, just basically what I teach now. And so then I put a couple of these together, and then drew the two more behind, and then made a whole slow. And then I traced a thing from a Sears catalog of a sleigh with Santa Claus. Well, it ended up, the teacher had me taking and going all over the school, putting up these Santa Claus and the reindeer. So I think really that my career started at that point. So that was like kindergarten.
Oh, wow.
First grade. And I was taking and drawing all this stuff. And I've never stopped. But, so that's how I started. And my father still was painting. I had a grandmother who took and painted and drew.
Oh.
And so we used to have private classes at my home. So as a teenager, I was doing a lot of painting, like 14, 15.
So you were around when your grandmother and your whole family was teaching
well,
classes?
they lived with us. Also, my father's father was trained in Finland as a sculptor and a stonemason.
Okay, so you got a family
there
of
were
artists.
there's a lot of artisan background.
Mm-hmm. And then after high school, did you go to art school right after? Or
Well, while I was in Well, I originally started, the first classes I took figure drawing were at Chenard's. Well, I think I was in the 10th grade in high school.
That's what I did
Yeah,
too.
and so,
10th grade, yeah.
In fact, I had numerous teachers that had been trained from the 1800s. So I'm sort of, in a way, my background is really, I'm sort of a bridge from a whole different generation of people. In the process I've taken in is when I went, like, say, okay, I started in high school, started going to Chenard's, then my family moved to West Los Angeles from sort of East Los Angeles, and so at that point I started taking Saturday classes at Art Center, and
This was, how old were you?
uh, 16, 17.
Oh wow, still really young. Art Center, 16. Wow.
So anyway, when I took and graduated, when I graduated from high school, I had a full scholarship at the Art Center, and I wasn't ready to work that hard.
What do you mean?
So I didn't even finish that. It was that summer semester. I went in the Navy, and I went in the Navy for a couple of years, traveled all over, and then when I came back, I went back to Art Center, and so at that point I went there. I started teaching when I was a student. Altogether, I probably spent 18 years there. At that point, I had people who were students of mine wanted to get into animation, and I had actually already had quite a few students of mine who had gone to work in animation at Disney, for instance. And this one friend kept saying, "Well, why don't you give Disney a call?" And I said, "Finally, I did," and they hired me. But I didn't know anything about animation. So literally, the day that they hired me, I walked out and bought a book on Disney so that I would know what they were talking about. I didn't know anything about it.
Okay.
And
But you made it work, right?
Huh?
You made it work.
Well, now this is really sort of like the key to, I'm not teaching anything different now than I did when I was I had my own school. Before I knew it, because everything is based on the fundamentals.
Right.
Drawing for animation is no different than no different than the Michelangelos, the Raphael. When I travel, when Disney sent me around the world teaching, I taught exactly the same thing. Same thing I teach exactly today. What my drawing manual. What they find that is a working in the industries, then going back to the animation. What they were asking me to do was to take exactly what I had already been doing. Designing paintings. One of the things that I did on my own work, primarily, I don't use models. I do almost everything for imagination.
Okay, well that's one of the questions, so we can just check that off of the list. You know, when I was in your workshop, that was one of the things that I was so impressed by, is you were able to create a realistic figure drawing without a model there. And I was kind of blown away by that, because you were doing details and lighting details and there was nothing in front of you in there. So.
Well, you know, where it comes from is that's what and of course in the animation industry we don't have models. We have model sheets that tell you what something looks like. Now, if you take a look at all of the masters, I don't care who you look at going back, Sistine Chapel, all the Raphaels, everything was started from imagination. They would do their roughs, they would do their thumbnails, they would develop the things. And then once they got to a certain point, if they needed to then understand the details, then they would get models or whatever. But everything started with the organization, storyboard.
Right.
The thumbnail.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's how they worked. And today, when people talk about the academy, most of the academy stuff, it's taking a model and copying it. And that's my classes, that's the first thing I say. We never copy the model. We don't copy the model. You analyze the model. If you're constantly analyzing the model and you think of the drawing as a study, then you are, every time you draw, you are studying and you're learning.
Right.
So you're not copying. So you can think of what my approach is basic. It's not my approach. It's really the traditional approach. Is you taking first, get gesture, you construct a form, then you start building on that construction and go from there. And that's really traditional drawing. And I could show, and I do, in class, I show examples from all over different periods, people doing exactly the same thing. The Vilppu Drawing Academy, okay. I have a class. One thing I find that most people don't, the basics that they don't have, like in my drawing classes, okay, how do you hold a pencil? Mm-hmm. How do you sharpen a pencil?
That's another question.
Yeah.
But actually, that's one that I took out because
yeah.
I filtered it out.
Yeah, so I started the whole class for that, yeah.
You must have gotten a lot of people that signed up for that class. Because
they do, I still do. It's called Essentials.
Right.
And it's doing, how do you, the materials. Mm-hmm. I get people that never heard of a chamois. Okay. How do you sharpen a pencil? How do you hold a pencil? Do value scales. All of the basic stuff you should know to start with, or at least be working on.
Right.
And so I go from that, and then I go right into figure drawing 1, 2, and in fact, I'm working right now on developing a course on landscape drawing.
Oh, cool. And this is for Vilppu Academy?
Huh?
For Vilppu Academy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where can they go to see this? What's the website?
Funny that you should ask.
Oh my God.
Now, it's all online. Just go to vilppuacademy.com.
Okay. I'll put the link.
Yeah, and then actually you can go there for my Saturday classes, my private classes. And I'm still teaching at the Animation Guild, and you go through them for their classes. My UCLA classes it's a master's program.
Oh, okay. So that's
so you have to have an undergraduate degree, and you have to go through the university system for that.
Oh.
But I do, literally, I get, like I said, I just got a note I was looking at this morning, somebody wants me to come to Japan. If it works out, we'll go. People ask, well, will you come here? I said, ask me. This is sort of it's been constant in my whole career. Is the one thing that when I was a student, I actually quit 6 months before I graduated. Okay, I'm not a great example for parents. Okay, but anyway, the reason why I quit was that I didn't feel like I was learning fast enough. So when I left, I had a studio, and I would just study every day, just drawing and painting. That's what I did. Mm-hmm. This is where part of the old master studying compositions. I would take books. Here.
Oh my God.
Look at these things are totally worn. It's how not to treat a book, you know. But I would take every morning, go out and get a cup of coffee, sit down, and I would draw from the old masters, from paintings, and studying, analyzing the composition. I did that for an hour or so every morning. Mm-hmm. And then I would start working on my own paintings. So this is what I did every day, literally 7 days a week. At night, I would take and work to make enough money to live. And I would never work more than 20 hours a week. I drove a cab, I worked at a ceramics factory cleaning molds, was chief urine carrier in a chemistry lab. I did all kinds of odd jobs.
what part of being an artist do you enjoy most?
Figuring out the problems.
Figuring out the problems, how to teach
Like
them?
a composition.
Oh, okay.
Like a composition and the teaching. Each class has dynamics of it, and so I'm always trying to find new ways or better ways to communicate the ideas.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. My favorite part of being an artist and a teacher is learning.
Yeah.
You know, my favorite part of being a teacher is learning because it forces me to learn deeply. That's the subject that I'm teaching.
Yeah. I'm not much for bull. If a student asks you something, if I don't know it, I say I don't know it. I'll find it out.
Right.
Yeah. And also, I put my hand where my mouth is. I demonstrate. I do it. I teach by doing. But that is, I can't stand to walk around a room with a bunch of people drawing and I'm not.
You get jealous.
It's horrible. I draw more than my students do. You saw my safe back there with.
Oh yeah, all the sketchbooks.
I probably have 1,000 sketchbooks.
Yeah, it's this huge safe. It's like
yeah, it's a big fire. So we're in a fire area here, so I have all this stuff. And even here, what I do with the drawings is like every month I have all my sketches. I scan everything. Then I put those drawings into categories.
You scan all your sketchbooks? Oh my God.
Well, I haven't gone back and scanned everything, but everything currently for the last maybe 5 years or so, I've scanned everything.
Okay. I think you actually kind of covered this just now. Can you recommend a weekly schedule for a studying regime? And that's kind of what you were saying. Every morning, you wake up, you go get a book, you study from the masters.
Yeah, and in fact, it's one of the lessons in my essentials class. How do you study? Mm-hmm. And that's literally what you do. Art is based on art. Mm-hmm. I could show you books of just artists' copies of other artists' work, and that's how they study. Mm-hmm. And I had one of my teachers, Lorser Feidelson. He was also half Finnish, but he would say, "Well, go to the library, take out, make a list of things like, for instance, what points, color, tone, line, composition, whatever, different elements." And then take and go into the library and pick out a book where you like just somebody you like, just their color. You don't like their drawing, you don't like their subject matter, you don't like anything else about them, but you really like their color. Okay. For each thing on this list, then take and find somebody that exemplifies that you like for that one aspect.
And then copy their work?
Well, then what you do is you have a stack of books of all these different artists. They're all different, but they all have something in them that you like. Then that's actually you then.
Combination of all of these.
Yeah, you got all of these elements. I'm constantly amazed by how, Eleanor keeps telling me that's your job, okay? But students have very little understanding of art history. They don't know stuff. And of course I didn't either. And I learned because I'm curious. One name leads you to the next, 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 to the next. And pretty soon you're finding all kinds of stuff that you didn't know existed. Like there was an artist, I think here. Okay, these are artists that I had never heard of until they had a show at the Getty. Gruz. Is Rasmus. Great. But one of the things that I really like about his stuff is look at how his roughs. This is how he would begin.
That's for a painting?
Yeah, and he was
that's
really,
really nice lane.
his paintings would be really attractive. These were all, this.
That's nice.
Okay, he influenced a little bit of Picasso there.
Yeah.
Here's one I mentioned about artists' copies of other artists' work. Peter Paul Rubens copying tissue.
Nice. It looks identical. Wait, which one's Rubens?
See, that's how you can tell.
He added to it.
Oh yeah,
Look
they
at
changed. Yeah, they changed. But he copied the whole Sistine ceiling. Drew it. I mean, right down to the thing. He was an ambassador in Spain. He copied several hundred paintings, all of the Titians. So literally, art is based on art.
Yeah.
Okay, you didn't got through all your questions.
No, we didn't. Let's do the speed round.
Okay.
What do you like to do to warm up?
Draw.
All right, that's good.
Quick sketch.
Quick sketch. Is there any problem using a ruler or calipers in drawing, or is it better to just use your eye to measure proportions?
No, in fact, I don't do very much measuring at all.
You don't measure with your eye?
Use your eye.
Okay.
Rubens, that was a thing Michelangelo said. Don't measure, use the eye. Now, but put it this way. There's an eye-hand coordination. My eye travels through the model at about the same pace that I'm taking and drawing, and I'm following through.
Okay.
I also have to correct myself a lot.
Right.
Yeah. I do measure. I will measure, but I basically I don't.
Do you measure with the pencil like this at
If
all?
I have to.
You have to?
If I have to.
Okay.
But it's not really, it's not, I don't start out that way. First it's the feeling.
First the
And
gesture.
then I correct myself.
Got it. Favorite color?
Blue.
Was that random? Did you just pick a color, or was it
No,
actually?
no, blue is my
Blue
color.
actually is your favorite. Okay.
Yeah.
Favorite drawing medium, or painting, or any kind of medium. It could be digital.
Actually, a very large percent of my drawing is done with a pen and wash.
Pen
with
and
a
wash.
brush, water brush and a pen.
that's what you
That's
do?
probably the biggest thing I work with.
Okay. Why do some artists draw a sketch before painting and others paint alla prima?
It's
Good answer. That's a good answer.
It's all drawing.
It's all drawing.
A sketch, you're focusing on the composition.
Right.
It's the organization of the whole thing. If you're just going to paint something, what's in front of you, fine. Then you're just basically copying, whether it's
Well,
color
can you
or
study
whatever.
a composition alla prima?
Yeah, well then it's drawing. Then you're just doing it. You're making a sketch on the canvas.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a sketch.
Yeah.
Your first one is a sketch. You
Yeah.
might maybe spend more time on it and finish it a little bit more.
Whether it's painting or drawing, it's the gesture. The gesture is the soul of your drawing. A gesture is the composition of the thing.
I've been drawing for years, but I still have trouble making bold, decisive strokes. What do you think about this?
Just think if you're going downhill skiing, you can't back up.
That's good. What do you enjoy more, the process or the end product of your hard work?
The process. Yeah.
How much time should I spend drawing from observation versus imagination? And what should I be aware of so that I'm always learning and not just copying the model? So that's
Okay.
2 questions.
Yeah, percentage type thing. If you have difficulty with something, then you study it until it's not such a problem. Like if you have difficulty with values, then you spend time until you get your values squared away. And then no matter what it is, as you're doing the drawing, if you find like, oh, I have a horrible time drawing thumbs, well then stop and figure out and learn how to draw thumbs.
All right, so from reference, you study that.
Yeah, and whether it's drawing from a model, reference, looking at anatomy, doesn't make any difference. It's what are your goals? So if you want to draw from imagination, you have to know you have to know the figure.
Okay.
And you learn the figure by drawing the figure, but analyzing the figure, which means then you're also analyzing anatomy, everything else.
So maybe draw from the figure until you can draw from your imagination, until you know it well enough.
No, study the old masters, analyze.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so first, if you can't get an action, it doesn't make any difference. That's one of the things that bothers me about a lot of academic painting is that they take a photograph, they work out a composition, take a photograph, and then copy the photograph. And they still end up looking like copied photographs. You have to go past that. You have to go past drawing from a photograph is one of the most difficult things because it's already developed. It's a two-dimensional imagery, and you need to take and be able to draw from a photograph like you would from a model. And that's
Right. Okay.
yeah.
I get it.
It's harder. People think it's easier, but it's harder.
Yeah. I mean, I always try to draw from life when I can,
Yeah.
as opposed to from a photograph because it's just.
But you have to know more to draw from a photograph.
Yeah. As you are arranging the model for a figure drawing, what do you look for? Position of the body, limbs, lighting, facial expressions. So basically, I guess the question is, what makes a good pose and a good setup?
My general attitude is I let the model, as long as it's got some kind of action to it, I let the model choose. I don't take and pose the model.
Mm-hmm.
I figure they should be able to draw anything. And then it creates more interesting problems.
So if it's a bad pose, it's good because you get to improve it on your drawing.
Yeah, it's going to create situations that you don't like, but you're going to have to deal with, you know, and it makes you learn more. So I very rarely pose the model.
Mm-hmm.
And I will, if I do, I'm looking for the movement.
Okay.
A pose that'll lend itself to movement, unless it's specifically talking about expressions. Then I will tell the model to take expressions, then we focus on that. Right. But generally, the only time I pose the model really is if it's in a head drawing class. And then it's taking for the angle of the head. And I try to focus on, or, 3/4 type thing.
How do beginning artists work through the growing pains of being in the same classroom as more advanced artists?
Great. You got more people to learn from.
Right. Have you encountered many artists who have a severe lack of self-confidence?
Yes.
Okay, good. Did you ever doubt yourself when you were starting out or any time in your career?
Yeah. When I first started teaching, I was petrified. Mm-hmm. That I was going to look like an idiot when I sat up there and started drawing. And it's one of the first things you have to learn is, as a teacher, if you screw up, it's a learning situation. You make a mistake, you say you made a mistake. The student learns from seeing that I make mistakes. And I'm always making mistakes. It's just that I've developed I'm on a higher level of mistakes. Or I shouldn't say not necessarily mistakes, but it never is really exactly what you intended when you started.
Right.
Because there's a point where everything takes on a life of its own that you have to take and deal with. But as far as lack of, first of all, the lack of confidence is not, how to put it, it's not respecting yourself. Mm-hmm. And that you should take and that nobody is going to be exactly like you, because you are unique. Mm-hmm. And that you should not worry about what anybody else does. It just does not matter. Yeah, and that just what you do is the only thing that matters.
That's a good one. So we'll say this is the last one. It actually comes from Marshall Vandroff.
Oh, Marshall. He was a student of mine, yes.
When you draw complete gestures, they come out proportionally close to the finish. Is this purely from experience, or do you see checkpoints that you don't actually draw? So I think we were talking about this, and he says that when he watches you do quick sketches, that they're so close to the correct proportion already that he doesn't understand how you can get it so close from a gesture.
Okay, it's really, and I sort of mentioned this a little bit, is that there's a certain level of eye coordination. Okay, as I'm drawing a gesture, I'm focusing on how one part relates to another. So as I'm drawing it, I'm leading the eye to understand it, but at the same time, I'm experiencing it. So the line is going through to a certain flow that I don't jump around. It's a continuity that I'm doing it. Mm-hmm. So there's and literally is my eye is going so far, my pencil is going so far. And and actually as a student, I remember having exercises where the teacher would have you cover up your hand with another piece of paper and draw.
Not looking at what you're drawing?
Yeah, so you could not see your hand.
So you have to imagine it in your head.
Well, you were looking, your hand movement was going
You're looking at your reference, right?
Yeah, you could see your drawing, but you could not see your hand. So there was a continuous flow of the line as you went through it.
That's a good exercise, because then you can feel your hand better.
Yeah. And so but then the other part of that is that I've been doing this forever.
Right.
And I will make a calculated, as I'm doing it, I say, oh yeah, forehead, pubic arch, the halfway, ta-da.
Right.
But it's all mileage.
Yeah, so the proportion probably just comes from
But I also have a tendency to make legs too long. Mm-hmm. I have a tendency, I know that. And I tend to cut them off. I know I do that.
Yeah.
And I'm always correcting myself.
Well, that's it. Thanks for guys for watching. Thank you, Mr. Vilppu, for being here and for letting me come to your studio. And thank you so much for all the instruction and continuing the tradition of the classical training. I think that what you're doing is really what saves this kind of this art. So thank you so much for passing that on to us.
I really appreciate the great opportunity, and it's sort of like I said, I'm really a preacher for drawing, so it's given me a lot more preaching here, and so you get it out in the world.
Yeah.
But it really is an opportunity. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. My pleasure. All right, thanks guys. If you like this video, share the wealth. Tell your friends. Post it on your favorite social network. And click this button here to subscribe to the Proko newsletter if you want to be updated about new videos. Bye-bye!